Good morning, Croydon. Hopefully you can hear me. Welcome to our first Croydon Business Webinar. We are all virtual in a variety of virtual places across Croydon and I'm sure beyond. Really delighted to be able to launch this service this morning. I would just say, as a sort of a health warning, if you like, in these times, this is the first time we've all done this. And we've all had great fun for the last half an hour working out what does and doesn't work. And as you can see, some of our backgrounds work, some of our backgrounds don't work. And Carol is working off of her mobile, hence why she looks slightly different to the rest of us. But enough of the technical stuff. We want to get on with this. I just want to say that from a white label perspective, we're very much here for Croydon. We've been here for Croydon for the last 10 years. And what we're trying to do in these unprecedented times is really step up to doing our bit to help the community, predominantly the business community, obviously, but also the wider community, to really ensure that all of us are kept as informed and up to date as possible. We're also a communications agency, so what a better way to do what we do best by communicating with all of you in this way. And I'm really delighted that we're at capacity. We have 100 people logged on listening to this, and we hope this is the first of many ways that we can keep you all informed and communicated in these unprecedented times. I'm going to hand over to my co-director, Jo Gum, who's going to chair this, and she's going to introduce you to our panelists, so enjoy.
So good morning, panelists. I hope that you can hear me all. There are a couple of features here which it would be good if we could take advantage of today. So if you would like to ask the panel a question, you can raise a virtual hand, and I should be able to see it on my screen. There are currently 67 of you and counting. So if I miss a hand, I'm really sorry. I will try to get round to everybody as soon as I can. It would be possible for me to then allow you to ask that question live, so that would be fantastic. If you would be more comfortable submitting a question using the question and answer facility, please again feel free to do so, and I will put those to the panel. First of all, therefore, I'd like to introduce our panelists to you. We have Carol Squires from the London Borough of Croydon, Matthew Sims from Croydon Bid, Finton of Tor from the HR department, and Raj from Covershaw. They're here to give their view and advice and what support we all can to support everyone during this time, and also to answer as many of your questions with their own areas of expertise. I'm going to kick off by asking each of them in turn to introduce themselves, tell us their main area of expertise in relation to the crisis that we are currently experiencing, and what their organisations are doing to help. Carol, would you like to kick us off in terms of what the London Borough of Croydon are doing?
So first of all, apologies if my text slips. I'm doing this from my mobile phone this morning. So I'm the head of economic development. My team looks after inward investment, business growth, business support, and employment and skills. And so what we have been doing over the last week or two is making sure that the business support is demystified, that we are well placed to deliver funding as and when we receive it. And I'm sure we'll explore that further going on. But for us, this is really about a community response, a business-led response. And we've tried to make sure that we've done that by setting up a business task force that allows us a real insight into what is happening within our business community and how to respond to it going forward.
Thank you, Carol. Matt, would you be able to give us some idea of the impact that the COVID-19 outbreak has had on the town centre?
I think from Croydon's point of view and across the borough and across the UK, actually, the impact is phenomenal. It's unprecedented. How we deal with that has to be compacted down into the short term, the medium term, and the long term. It's going to take a long time for the UK and the world to recover from this. I think from our point of view, the bid company's immediate expertise is to work with all of the businesses that we represent, but also, and I've got to be clear about this, the town centre and borough-wide, really, because we are there to offer the support. We're taking away all our boundaries, because businesses so desperately need that help, that support, almost a kind of an ear and somebody to kind of listen to. I think just going on from Carol's point, we sit on the strategic coordination group with the GLA, which is specifically for business, working with partners such as London Resilience, FSB, CBI and the like, really to kind of consider the short term, but also the long term. And Carol's already mentioned the business task force, but I think for now, the bid company is working with every single business that we have, which is 545 businesses in the town centre and more, to make sure that the business critical communications are there, that you have the support that you need, and so that you have the information as and when it appears.
Quentin, can I pass it to you? Because I imagine that you might have been quite busy over the past week or so. Quentin, are you able to hear me?
Quentin's muted, actually. Oh, no, he's unmuted.
The Cardinal Sin, sorry, I'm muting myself. The business has been inundated, I guess, by people who are desperately concerned about how they can look after their employees over the coming months. That seems to be the major question that we're getting. And I think there was a palpable relief on Thursday when the Chancellor at least made an announcement to say that businesses would be able to support their employees. Still, though, we only have about 15 lines of text on an otherwise very helpful government site, which is under the Direct Gov site, which is well worth looking at. But 15 lines of text explaining how this whole job retention scheme may work. And we're working very hard with barristers and HR experts around the country to apply what the little bit that we do know to current employment law, which we're told will stand. At the moment, I'll stop there. That's the impact on us, and we're working very hard to make sure that we have some answers.
Rajan, I've just unmuted you. Perhaps you could give us a feel for how the insurance industry is managing in the current times.
Yeah, we're still in a little bit of uncharted waters. Obviously, our Chancellor made an announcement coming up to, I think, a week yesterday about cover. So the only advice, we've been inundated with calls from clients by email or text or calling us. So what we're trying to do as a small business in Croydon, it'll be 5 years for us this May that we've been in Croydon. And we just want to join hands. But where the insurance is concerned, you need to speak to your insurer or your broker to get clarity on whether you're covered or not. That's the only advice we can give at the moment, because it's a changing playing field on a daily basis. And there are so many insurers in the United Kingdom. So you need to be clear about your policy. And the best way to do that is to contact your insurer directly or your broker. And we're helping our clients by speaking to them. Whether they're contacting us or not, we've made it a mandate now to go out to all our clients and speak to them, hold their hand and reassure them.
Sorry about that. I've managed to hold this in the office today and the phones are ringing, which is obviously terribly good news, but I can't currently switch them off in the background. We do have our first question in from one of our attendees. Jeremy Taylor has asked, can Croydon Council offer a council tax holiday or other support for home-based businesses that are unlikely to access NDR or rural rate relief schemes?
So I believe that there has been something around council tax that has been announced today, and yesterday, and I don't have the full details, I'm afraid. But what I would say to you is, and that includes, payment deferral. But what I would say to you is that we have a newsletter that is sending out all of this information as we are defunking it. Really, if you are not already signed up to it, I would quite happily send you guys the link so that you can get information as we're interpreting it and delivering it out to you as quickly as possible. That way you get the correct information as we are interpreting it and making sure that you have it right there in front of you.
I have another one, which is, I have a question from Lucky David. I opened my business in Croydon High Street on the 29th of February. Unfortunately, I had to close the shop on the 22nd of March due to COVID-19. had traded for less than a month. Is there any help from the local council? It was a new concept nail bar and the first of its kind in Croydon. I think that's particularly tragic to not even manage 3 to 4 weeks of trading to be able to, it would make it very difficult, I get, to access business help. Any recommendations from our panel as to what Lucky can do?
So my first recommendation would be you are absolutely entitled to apply for our Croydon Enterprise Loan Fund, which is very, and you know, it is absolutely tragic. You're absolutely right. I think the whole thing for all of our businesses is absolutely tragic, actually. But there is a loan fund there that is there ready and waiting with lots of business support and help. It's not just a loan fund. It can sign you through and access to all kinds of one-to-one business support going forward. However, we know that cash is king right now, and for many businesses, signing up to a loan fund is going to be really difficult. So you do have, and if you're already entitled to the small business rates relief, you will be entitled to the government announced £10,000 grant. So you don't have to apply for that. If you'd already signed up, you'll be already on our non-domestic ratepayer CRM. So what we're trying to do is make sure that that is delivered to you as quickly and as efficiently as possible. We received the government guidelines yesterday. We already have staff in place to collect details. There'll be no application process. But what we will need is bank account details of businesses. So we will be writing to our businesses, but there will be an email that goes around to everyone that actually takes you to a link on the website where you can enter your details. That should be live pretty quickly. And as soon as that is done, that will go through our own newsletter. So again, please do sign up for that so you get up-to-date information and links that allow us to deliver it straight to you as quickly as possible. The thing is, we know that it's really difficult at the moment, and we are trying to make sure that our services are delivered as quickly as possible. And part of that is making sure that we have the information we need to be able to deliver it. There is also our very own discretionary rates relief fund. And last year we had about £1 million went to support our local businesses in our community. So if you don't fall into the category that government have announced on the £10,000 grants and the £25,000 grants, then you are welcome to apply for the discretionary rates relief, our own discretionary rates relief. It's a very simple process, a very simple application form. All you need to do is to email economicdevelopment@croydon.gov.uk, and we will make sure all of those details are actually on our website at the moment, and an officer will be in touch and show you how to do that.
Thank you very much, Carol. Can I say that I can see we've got 73 people online at the moment, and I have very few questions, and nobody out there has waved a hand to say, I'd like to ask a question of the panel. So can I encourage you to bring, as if by magic, a question arrives. Kelly Stone, I share a premises with another business, so the premises is not in my name. I pay my landlord rent, but my name is not on the lease. Seems I'm not entitled to the grant. Is there any help? Well, that does sound like an extremely complicated knot to untangle.
So you're right, because the grants that government have given are all down to the property. So they're almost a property grant. So if it's your landlord that is claiming either small business rates relief or paying the rates, then you're not entitled to that. Although you might want to have a conversation with your landlord, because, you know, some kind landlords are actually offering some support themselves to their businesses. And I've got to say, I have heard a few of the people that we've spoken to doing that, and that's been successful. So, you know, again, it is a community response. They're going to want to keep you going because you're paying them rent, and you should be talking to them and negotiating and moving that forward. So what I would say to you is talk to your landlord. You aren't entitled to that discretionary rates relief, and if you're not paying any kind of discretionary rates, you wouldn't be entitled to apply for our own discretionary rates relief fund, I'm afraid, but you would be entitled to apply for the Croydon Enterprise Loan Fund. There is also a loan fund that's done by the Business Bank that we will be exploring the impact of, But again, what I would say to you is, as things come through the government, and we are expecting announcements from the government around support for the self-employed. So as things come through, we will make sure that that information goes to the heart of the businesses. And if you sign up, you'll get that as soon as we know it.
Thanks, Carol. I have one here for Fintan. So Fintan, if you would kindly unmute so that we can hear your response. It's from Ash & Co Accountants, and it says, the government's offering employees 80% of salaries to any employee on furlough leave, and we understand the scheme applies to business, charities, part-time and full-time employees. Is that correct?
That's as it stands at the moment. The government has said that it's open to all businesses. Specifically, it says on their website, which is updated lastly on the 24th, if I just, that it's available to, bear with me 1 second, it's going to be available to all businesses regardless of, sorry, I haven't got the exact, sorry, I won't try and find the thing. The understanding is it's all businesses. The test really is whether you're paying PAYE. That's what this scheme is designed to cover.
Yeah.
There's a backup question. I think a lot of people are going to be asking actually, which is that the furlough scheme also mentions the employee cannot work for the employer during that period. But for organisations to survive, they're going to need a small amount of work carried out. What happens under those circumstances? Can the employee still be put on a furlough scheme? So I guess, can people be put on and off?
Okay, so that's not clear yet. The piece of employment law that this is most closely akin to is the concept of layoff, and businesses who've been approaching us in advance of this furlough scheme have been looking at this. Layoff is, if there's a contractual entitlement to do so, you can lay your employees off for, in effect, up to 5 weeks, paying them a maximum of £192 in that period, which is obviously unsatisfactory in these circumstances. So the government scheme is looking to add to that by adding additional pay, but it's likely, and we can only say likely at this stage, that the scheme will continue to operate in a furlough type way. So that means that you are not at work. The government says very clearly in the advice to employees that you will not be able to work for your employee in these circumstances. So it looks at the moment, and what we're suggesting is that people plan to have a core workforce that will be able to deal with the day-to-day, the keeping the business ticking over, and look to put the rest of the workforce onto furlough, with a caution, which is that we still don't know exactly how that furlough scheme is going to work. So it may be that in the short term, what you look to do, if you are in this difficult circumstance, is to lay your employees off on that less attractive scheme for them, but the one that protects you as a business, with a view to saying to them that in time, when the scheme is up and running, if we are able to take advantage of it, we will then look to furlough you. I know that people are in really difficult circumstances at the moment, but if they can buy a little bit of time using the existing layoff scheme, that would probably be to their benefit. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. I have a question actually, which is that I have seen two versions of the 80% rule, one of which is that it's a grant of 80% of salary, and the other of which is 80% of total wage costs. So, are you aware of any clarification between those?
No, not as yet, no. The wording is HMRC will reimburse 80% of furloughed workers' wage costs. That's what the government's 15 lines of concise information are telling us. And I think just bearing in mind that if the other thing that they've said is that employment law applies and is subject to existing employment law, any grant of that kind would be subject to, normally would be subject to national insurance contributions and normal PAYE deductions.
That was my view. So I was wondering whether it actually covered the additional NI or not, but is that something about which we're still unclear?
we're still all I can unhelpfully tell you is that it says 80% of furloughed workers' wage costs up to a cap of 2,500, and the devil will be in the detail. And there are two other words that I would just caution people on as well. It does say that in order to do this, you need to apply. So in the process of application, that application would suggest that it's not an automatic grant. So therefore, there will be some criteria for this application. So look out for those when that document is produced. Okay, that's the particular criteria. And then, yes, sorry, the other bit is about the amount of cost that will actually be reimbursed.
Thank you, Fintan. I have one other question which is quite similar, which is somebody has asked that they recalled the government saying that the SSP or the 80% would only be for 2 weeks. This was announced yesterday. Not sure if this is correct. I don't think that's true. Would anybody else like to come in on that one?
I don't think that's correct. I haven't heard that. But I mean, and I think that a lot of the detail really needs to be clarified as quickly as possible, I think, Joe. And I think that's one of the issues, is that the government have announced it, but actually the detail on how the mechanism for delivery and what it actually means for real humans is not quite there yet. If I could just add something, actually, we've had quite a lot of employers who've been absolutely just heartbroken, having to let staff go or put a hold on staff. And we do have Croydon Works who have been rigorously working away, helping our residents sort of in the short and long term get into jobs. So there are lots of jobs that are not applicable at the moment, but an increase in jobs, short term and long term, to help with this quite awful sort of situation that we're facing at the moment. So things around healthcare, industrial, drivers, you name it, they are actually actively looking for. So I would say to anybody who might be trying to support their staff through this awful process, talk to Croydon Works. They might be able to help get people into temporary sort of jobs at the moment until we get back to what, normality, whatever that is going to look like in the future. But also, it helps from an employment and skills sort of perspective. It helps the employer be able to work that signposting, because I've never met an employer that wants to lay their staff or force stop their staff from working.
Carol, can I just ask, under the present sort of confusion over exactly how furloughing staff is going to work, I guess there's an assumption at the moment that if you furlough your staff, they then can't work for you, and therefore they can't work for anyone else either. So, they might only have, up to the 2.5K of 80% of their salary, which is significantly less than that. Yeah. But actually, they may still want to earn some money in addition to that to top up their wages. Do we know yet whether they would be able to do that by doing some of these additional jobs that are so needed at the moment?
We don't, but we are lobbying to get that detail as quickly as possible. I mean, and I think businesses and our residents deserve to have that detail, because the crisis is right here, right now. So I know there's lots of conversations going on, which is why I would say the key thing for us as a community at the moment is to be able to communicate effectively together. So as soon as we get that information, we can make sure that that is out in the ether and people understand it. So we don't counsel it up, so to speak, and we make sure that people understand what those messages are as quickly as possible. So as soon as we know the detail, and I know our friends at British Chambers of Commerce, London Chambers, Federation of Small Business, Capital Enterprise, and the London Growth Hub, and the LEAP as well, are looking at trying to get that detail as soon as possible. And I'm sure my colleagues at HMRC are working on the detail behind the scenes. So, it's not moving as quickly as we'd like, but that's just because as quickly as what we'd like is right here, right now. But I can tell you now, I've never seen such a collective response to try and get that detail down into what actually comes to real money for people.
Joe, I was just going to pick up on a question which is relevant to us all, because we're all at the end of the month and payroll is looming, and someone has asked, I've actually lost the question at the moment, but someone has asked about what they should do right now about paying wages this month. in the light of any furloughing and what that might mean. Vinton, have you got any advice on that?
I think it's so difficult to give precise advice because the scheme, as it's announced at the moment, is so vague. And that's the biggest challenge that we've had with all of our employers who've been coming and talking on to us. We've generally, the first rule of thumb for any business is that the business must do what it can to survive for the long term so that it's there to be able to bring its employees back. And if it's having to make payments and it just physically can't afford to make the payments that it can, that it's due and contracted to make this month, I guess all you can do is do your best. You may be subject to a claim for unlawful deduction of wages, but that will hopefully resolve itself in due course and going forward. To protect yourselves, if you genuinely have no work and if you genuinely need your business to survive, going forward as soon as you can, the option is to lay off under the government scheme that allows for a maximum of £150 or so payment for your employees going forward. Hopefully then the furlough scheme will kick in with April, so that during the month, if you've managed to get most of your pay made for March, people will have some money to live with over the course of March. Hopefully, the government plan to get the scheme in place in April so that you will be able to afford to pay your staff at that time. But we can only watch this space. I'd love to be able to give more comfort, but as I say, there's only 15 lines of notice. Somebody else is asking, what about directors? If can we put ourselves on furlough if we want to carry on running the business? And again, all I can say is that the government guidelines say that furloughed workers cannot work for the company. Can they go and work elsewhere? Possibly, but it may be then that the furloughed worker would have to pay back any money that would be paid to them through the furlough scheme. So again, 101 questions that some very big legal brains are working on at the moment. And I know the government is working hard to put in a scheme that probably, if we were doing this in normal times, would take between 6 and 18 months for them to introduce. So as employers with your teams, if you can keep as calm as you can during this time. I know it's incredibly difficult, but there is some employment law there to help you in the short term. And the government is, to pick up on Carol's things, wading in as quickly as it can to pick up and give some extra support.
I've got a very good question here, which I think raised a very interesting issue from Natalie Sylvan-Bruce, which is, do you know what will happen with work vehicles that need an MOT but can't get access to a garage? I anticipate a backlog at garages, so businesses can't get back on track. I appreciate this is something that may or may not have been considered yet, but I thought it was a good question. I don't know which of us would like to pitch in to see if we can help with that, but I'm going to look automatically at Carol as the LBC representative.
Well, it's an excellent question, isn't it? I'd like to say I have the answer, but I really don't, if I'm very honest. I think that we have to look at pragmatically what's going to keep our society moving, and we have key essential workers. I know my colleagues at the council, who my team are particularly focused around business, but we're looking at all kinds of things: schools, health, waste collection. So there are some business as usual services that are absolutely essential. And and those that MOTs and vehicle and we've got to be sensible, I suppose, in our approach. So I believe my understanding is that part of that is essential services. But I think a lot of it, there's been a lot of confusion over the last couple of days. I mean, my team have been absolutely inundated with businesses saying, well, am I essential? I'm doing this. We did have some clarification yesterday on which businesses are essential. And if anybody is confused about that now, you are welcome to email me. But yeah, I think that we are in unprecedented times at the moment. And together as a community, we need to have a real common sense approach to what we need and what can be done. It may be that we need to move and shift priorities. We need to talk to each other. We need to listen. We need to respond.
If I could just add to that my son is, as we speak, taking his car to be MOT'd. at a local garage. So there are certainly the independent businesses out there that need to keep going and can offer can do the isolation very well, because they're literally one-man band working on a car, or two of them. So I know there are small businesses that are still able to operate. So it's worth ringing around and seeing who's available.
Can I just bring in here a question from Jeremy Taylor, who's actually said it's been announced this morning that it would be a 6-month pause. Owners to be granted MOT exemption in battle against coronavirus. So hopefully if people can look that one up, that might answer the question for people.
I get my son to come home immediately and not worry about his duty.
So can I just add about insuring vehicles? We've had a number of queries come in from clients who own fleet vehicles, where there are a number of vehicles insured under a policy, because those vehicles are not going to be used now. So again, I would say contact your insurer that, but be aware if you're on a public road or you're parking a vehicle on a public road, there is the need for insurance. And also, apart from not driving it, you could have malicious damage. There could be other damage to the vehicle. So do think carefully about not insuring your vehicles. So do seek advice on that.
I've got a really nice question that's come in, and I think it's important that we start to think about the future. So Jennifer, who's responsible for careers education of some sixth form students at the Royal Russell School, she would like to know from all of us as employers what we would expect to hear from these students when they come to apply for jobs in the future. Clearly, because of the current situation, there is an expectation or an anticipation that there may be fewer jobs for people coming out of education in the medium-term future. So is there something that we can do or think of now as employers that might help these people with their career choices, and or how they might best position themselves to gain employment in the future?
Can I pick up on that one? Because I know that Croydon Voluntary Action and Croydon Commitment, and I know Carol can add to that in terms of what's happening in terms of volunteering opportunities. And I imagine these students, and I'm thinking maybe some furloughed staff would be able to volunteer. And there is obviously a wealth of volunteering opportunities that are coming forward, literally daily. And I'm assuming that, Jennifer, your students could be looking at those volunteering opportunities, adding that to their CVs, and then as employers, when we are in a position in the future to look at recruiting, that's really going to help their CVs in this time. If they can add as much of that type of thing, get as much experience of that onto their CVs, that's going to stand them in a really good position. You're definitely going to look at someone in the future that's done that, as opposed to maybe someone that's just thought, I'll stay at home and sit on my Xbox as an alternative. So that would be my view. But I know, Carol, there is a sort of a bigger group meeting on that subject, isn't there, in Croydon?
Yeah, absolutely. And like Jennifer, I think you do have to look at, you do have to be positive, and there are lots of opportunities that won't disappear overnight. You know, it's actually a subject close to my heart, because I have two 18-year-olds, one of which was going to finish his A-levels and look at apprenticeships. But, you know, our team are working really hard to make sure that those opportunities, will still be there in some way or another. But I think the issue really is going to be about where are those opportunities, grabbing hold of them. There's things like apprenticeships, developing skills, volunteering opportunities, absolutely. And today's society, right here, right now, where the government have asked for 250,000 volunteers, and overnight there's 170,000 that are signed up. You know, the employers that we talk to, they're looking at attitude, they're looking at a go-getter. You know, it's not all about whilst exams are really, really important, it's not just about the exams. So my advice would be, you know, grab hold of these opportunities, make yourself stand out. There are ways and means of doing that. The community coming together to deliver stuff together at the moment is a real opportunity to put, you know, different things that you've responded to on your CV. From us as a council, it's about, you know, job creation. That's why our team exists, really, ultimately, is to make sure that our residents have brilliant, wonderful London living wage jobs, and that Croydon thrives and prospers. You know, we're going to have to take a view, I think, once we get back to some kind of normality, of how we work together to shape things like the high street, but also other sectors. But that going forward, and how we can encourage those opportunities together. And that is part of the inward investment kind of programme, looking at how we do that going forward. And I think part of that is making sure that we get the funding to the heart of where we want it to be, and that isn't just the council working by ourselves at all. It's the council working across into departments, but it's also working and embedding things in the community, trying to bring opportunities into Croydon, and we can only do that together. So an example of working together, I think, Catherine, is the Develop Croydon and how relationships allow us to do that going forward. Right here, right now, we are in crisis mode. There is no doubt about it, but sooner or later, we're going to have to shape a future together. And what the wonderful thing that I genuinely feel about Croydon is the passion that our Croydon residents and businesses have, and the way that they do come together to develop things in a crisis. So this, community surge, I think, is something we could build on.
Matt, I don't know whether you want to unmute yourself and just give a response from the bid, and particularly in terms of the nighttime economy. I know you're doing, that's obviously an area of concern.
Yeah, I think the nighttime economy, and again, we've been in touch with Mr. Fox, the Spread Eagle, and others. And kind of just picking up on Carol's point, communities all over the UK, but I'm going to talk about Croydon because that's why we're here. We stand together. We have always stood together, and we stand together in the harshest of times, in crisis such as these. This is unprecedented. None of us have experienced anything like this before, so we are learning as we're going through. The response that the bid company takes, the response that the local authority takes, and other partners is absolutely key. Yes, we're very much reactive at the moment in terms of what's happening and being able to look at the communications coming through from the government. But we're working very closely with the local authority and others to be able to put together a response, a proactive response, so that we are ready to almost, in effect, reboot the town centre and reboot the borough, because I think that's what it's going to take. On the nighttime economy side of things, it's very, very difficult for businesses. The majority of our levy payers are over the 51,000 mark, and therefore the financial support isn't necessarily there at the moment. So we kind of have to work that through and see how we can support them for the future. There's going to be a big focus in terms of being able to generate business for them in the future, create those opportunities so that they can come through this as best they can.
Thanks, Matt. I know Jo's got a few other issues she's clearly dealing with in the office as we speak.
We've just got a different man arrive. And
yes, I thought it was
lovely.
I just wanted to pick up on a question that is close to our hearts. We're in the events industry. I know there's been a lot of call outs that there isn't anything specifically available yet in terms of support for the events industry, a massive area of the economy, and an area where clearly none of us can do any events. Obviously, we can do virtual events like this, but they aren't exactly going to pay the wage bills in the current climate. And I think I've lost the question actually, so apologies. I think it was from Tom Rose, who was basically asking that question. I know I've seen some lobbying. I think there is a petition that's going to Parliament today on this, but I don't know, Carol, whether you've got any more insight into that particular sector.
Not particularly, but I think there's quite a few sectors that have been impacted that don't fit into the categories that have had the support outlined, if I'm really honest. So, collectively our voices need to be heard. The GLA are collecting evidence as we speak, and that's fed up into the government. And that will, the louder our voices are heard together, really, will be how we influence sort of funding coming down from the government. There are things like the deferred VAT payment schemes and deferred income tax payments for the self-employed. But You know, the reality is right here and right now, there are businesses who are losing out and don't fit into the characteristics that have been highlighted. And I think our job is to identify those gaps and to work out how we can support those businesses going forward. The Growth Hub, so the London Growth Hub and Coaster Capital both have hotlines that you can call and are offering one-to-one support that can signpost you to a variety of different kinds of information and funding. And we're finding some funding pots starting to spring up. So, for example, if you're a freelancer in the creative, there is a free Federation for Creatives membership that will help you source funding and lobby on your behalf and all of those kind of things. And Facebook as well have announced £1 million fund, which small businesses can apply for. And again, if you sign up to the newsletters, as the funding streams come down and we hear of different funding pots, which is literally daily at the moment, we will let you know where they are and how to get them.
Joe's muted. I think on that, what I was going to say was that I've just launched a poll actually, and some of you are already answering that poll. We're asking which of the current economic interventions announced by the government will you be using? What we want to try and do through this forum is to use this as a bit of a Croydon business barometer and actually get feedback from you all so that we can have a collective answer and voice that would go through to the powers that be in the council, local government, through the LEAP, whatever that might be. So I'd encourage you all to take part in that poll. Sorry, Joe, back to you.
All right, I was just going to follow through with Carol on a question that had come in, which is that we've mentioned a couple of times that it's good to sign up to receive the information. Where is the sign-up place for people to get that regular information?
If you go onto the council website, just sign up to the newsletter. It should be right at the top. You can always just email economicdevelopment@croydon.gov.uk and we will make sure that comes directly to you. So if you literally just email that email address, we will make sure it comes to you.
Thank you very much. We've got questions coming in about commercial rent and rates and other grants and financial protections. Is there a particularly good place for people to go to find out what is happening there?
Yes, if you go onto our website, we have a special coronavirus page that you can go into, and business support and advice. So there's lots of information around food safety, health, you name it. It's there as it's coming through. So please do go on there and have a look. There is actually, if you can't find what you're looking for, there is a form you can fill in and we will go away, find the information and get back to you.
Thank you very much. Our poll looks like it's doing very nicely, but you are still voting. Can you get your votes in, please, before we need to end the poll? I have a lady called Yvonne Foster who is waving. Yvonne, I'm going to allow you to talk. Would you like to ask your question live? Yvonne, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm here. Good morning. My question, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Great. Okay, so my question is about certificating for sick leave. We know the normal rules are up to 7 days, you self-certificate, thereafter you get a GP sick note. Clearly, we are unable to get GP sick notes at the moment. So I'm wondering, should employers just continue to self-certificate for any specific periods of sickness?
The best thing to do is to actually certify by going on to, for anybody who is off sick, they should go to the NHS 111 online page. And there is an ability there on that line to actually self-certify, well, to enter the details, which will act as you either having a certificate or self-certifying. You enter the symptoms and it takes you down that track, Yvonne.
Great. So the employee does that clearly, yeah?
That would be what I would ask them to do, and to give you evidence that they've done that.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. We are getting towards the end of our time now, so I'm going to say, are there any other questions people would like to come in the near future? Otherwise, I think there is another poll that we would like to launch. Catherine, I'm saying, was there a second poll that you would like to get some information on?
You're muted, Catherine. You're muted.
I'm unmuted now. Yes, there is a second poll, but I believe I have to finish this poll before I can launch a second one. So we'll just leave this one going for a little bit longer, just to allow a few more people to complete the poll. The second poll is actually asking you about how confident you are as a business that you are going to make it through and out the other side. I mean, clearly that's all of our aims, that's all what we're trying to do. But I think it would be really helpful for the council, for the government and for others to actually understand exactly what confidence there is, because all of this money is great. And I do get that everyone is trying to do this very much, making it up as we go along. But fundamentally, as a small business, I'm sure we're in the same position as everyone else. We are really, working day to day to try and make things work, to try and make things meet, to be innovative about how we might keep our business going. And the whole question of who we furlong and who we don't. It isn't an easy time, and there isn't a clear answer whether we are all going to make it through. And clearly, whether we all make it through is going to have a massive impact on when we get to the new normal, whenever that might be, actually who is left as a business. And I feel really passionately that as an SME, we know SMEs make up, is it 99.9% of the economy? And actually, if we don't have many SMEs left when we come through out the other side, the world's going to be a very different place, as well as not having the people with the money that can then go back and shop in the restaurants, in the shops, or eat in the restaurants. At the moment, the funding is available very much for retail, leisure and hospitality. But if as SMEs, we don't actually make it out the other side, then actually who's going to have the money to go and spend in these places once they are able to reopen? So it is, a very, very real problem for all of us. And we think it's important that we gain some sort of barometer of how Croydon businesses are feeling. So that will be the second poll that we will launch. The other thing that I want to say is that this is very much the first one of these, and we would really appreciate your evaluation on how helpful it's been. We would willingly and happily do a lot more of these if there is a requirement for that, and to keep you updated, making these a regular event. And then as things happen, we can give you the opportunity to talk if that's what people feel there is a need for. So really, we need your evaluation. We'd love you to give us more responses. We are videoing this. We are writing this up as we speak. So there will be a full brief that is issued, and all the questions that have been raised and those that haven't been answered particularly will also all be gathered, and we will look to get answers. A lot of the questions are on the same subject. At the end of the day, obviously, we all want to know the actual detail behind some of these government schemes. So as and when that detail is released, we can be using this forum to provide more one-to-one support if that's what people need. Back to you, Jo.
Thank you very much. I'm going to end that poll now because it does look as if we've had the majority of people who are going to vote. So we'll close that one down. Got a number of questions in, mostly around commercial rents, which I appreciate there isn't an answer to. I understand the position at the moment is while the government has introduced or is introducing legislation to prevent eviction, commercial rents will still all be due later on in the year, and people will still have to pay them. Any comments from our panel on how best to handle that situation?
So, Jo, do you want me to say something that might be
that would be
useful?
good. I appreciate that people are simply stacking up the debt. You get the promise that you won't be evicted in the short term.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is at the moment, the advice seems to be talk to your landlord and negotiate a payment holiday. For us, we don't own a lot of assets, but I know we've been in touch with some of our, businesses inside our buildings and done exactly the same. But I think the reality is, this is going to impact, what is happening right now is going to impact our economy, not just here and now, but for quite a significant amount of time, we believe. So, it's going to be about developing the kind of relationship that you can with landlords. And I would hope that landlords would be flexible around that, because, businesses are going to be in the same place. At the end of the day, most businesses will be in the same place. What I would say to you is, you know, for businesses that don't necessarily or can't manage to do that, we do have our own Croydon Urban Edge service where we can look at supporting you into premises that might mean a lower cost, or, you know, your budgets might change, or however, you know, whatever we do as we come back to, you know, normality, or whatever kind of normality we have, you know, that might be an option for some businesses. It's not ideal. I'd like to say that we have, you know, a different kind of offer, and it was payment holiday forever, but, you know, until businesses get back on their feet. But I suspect that's not necessarily going to be the case. So talk to your landlords, and talk to us. We may be able to help you work within a different kind of budget when you get back to you know, normal. But obviously those that are under leases will be tied into those leases unless they have a break. So again, there may be loan funds, or it might be a case that we start lobbying collectively together to get government to think about different and innovative ways of being able to support the business community. Because Catherine is right, the majority of our businesses are SMEs, and without the SMEs, you know, it's a very, very different economy.
Jo, can I jump in?
Yes, I was going to say, Matt, would you like to have a comment on this one?
Yeah, so it's a personal comment in the sense, and this is what the bid company would stand behind. These are incredibly challenging times, but we would ask all landlords, if at all possible, to work with those that are occupying their buildings or their floors to try and find a way of negotiating a delay on the rent, if that's at all possible, to allow those businesses a little bit of time to breathe. They desperately need that. I think we all need that. And I think that's vital, you know, especially for the SME market. But the other part to this is not to forget the larger businesses as well, because if you take the high street and the strain that the high street was under pre-coronavirus, and also the nighttime economy and other sectors, they need as much support as they can possibly get. So we would ask landlords to do as much as they possibly can.
Absolutely.
Can I just come in on that? We've just paid our quarterly rent today because it was already set up. So we've just paid for the next 3 months. What we've done today is I've actually emailed our managing agents to request the landlord to say, because technically from Monday I will not be in the office, so we will not be using this space, and asking our managing agent to go to our landlord and say, what help can you give us? So going back to what Carol said and what Matt said, you know, we've been in this office now just over 20 months. So we're coming up to the end, you know, 2 years. We've been here, always paid on time. So I'm hoping that the landlord will look at it in a positive way.
And I know I have heard some people in Croydon have already been given rate holidays. Some landlords have reduced rents, I think, by 50% because they aren't going to be actually in the offices. So there is some of that happening, and it would be probably helpful to understand more about what that picture looks like. So maybe there's something on that we could try and coordinate to get some feedback on exactly what landlords are doing in Croydon.
That would be helpful.
I don't know whether that's something that the council could try and pick up on in terms of, from your economic team, actually trying to reach out and get some sort of get some feedback really on who is saying what, because again, I think there's a lobbying thing there that actually if we could get landlords to all agree to one policy for Croydon, then that would benefit a lot of people.
So, I mean, absolutely, we'll take that back to the Croydon Business Network as well, because again, I think that the more of us who are gathering that information and saying stuff in a collective voice, it just makes lobbying much stronger together, doesn't it? But yeah, Catherine, we will most certainly facilitate that.
Great, thanks.
Thank you very much. We're coming up to the end of our time, so I would just like to pass around our panellists to say in turn if there's anything that each of them would like to say to our audience before we finish for today, and hopefully we will be able to pick up with any unanswered questions going forward. Fintan, if I start with you, is there anything that you would like to advise people as the top most important thing they should think about for the next couple of weeks?
Oh, you're muted. You're muted, Fintan.
Sorry. Sorry. The government will be working as hard as they can to get all the detailed information in as quickly as possible. And in the meantime, those of us who are employers and those of us in HR have a duty to our employees to, it's a bit cliche, but to remain calm. We can help. There will be help available to us over the course of the coming months. It's not going to be everybody getting their annual salary on a plate. There will be difficulty and there will be hardship, but there's bound to be support. Most importantly, it's your employees' health you need to worry about, and their mental health in particular. These are incredibly stressful times. Reach out to the support that is available widely in the community and point them in the direction of those support services as they grapple with something that is unprecedented in any of our lifetimes.
Thank you very much. Carol?
So I think Fintan said exactly what I would say, to be honest. You know, this is absolutely unprecedented, the situation that we're looking at the moment. We are trying to work as quickly and efficiently to get the right kind of support to the businesses as it is announced. I would say, you know, again, a big call out is give us your details and so that we can effectively communicate. So do email that email address, economicdevelopment@croydon.gov.uk. And if you are inside Croydon or even outside Croydon and you want to hear a little bit more as quickly as possible, then you are welcome. We'll send that out to you. What I have been impressed at actually is the huge surge of businesses that have said, well, actually, I've closed my doors, but, you know, I've got a working kitchen, or I've got some food, or how can I get involved in the volunteering? How can I support my local community? So for all of those businesses, I would like to say huge thank you. And, you know, if anybody else is looking to get involved, again, please do email that email address.
Rajan, can I pass to you now? I've just unmuted you, so hopefully we'll
Thank you. Three things, if I can say very quickly. Exactly 2 weeks ago today, I was speaking at Royal Russell School, thanks to Jenny, to their sixth form about customer care. And I think what we may find that if we're in this period for the long term, business owners like me will probably have a bit of time working from home. And I would encourage Jenny and Ellie and Catherine there for their sixth form to say, use Zoom like we're using today, and maybe set up sessions like Catherine and Joe have set up today with your sixth form. And I'm sure there's a lot of businesses in Croydon that would love to engage with the sixth form. So that's one thing. The second thing I would say is, as I repeated at the beginning, check with your insurance company or your broker about business interruption cover. But equally important, three other things with your insurance. If your premise is going to be unoccupied long term, which it may be likely, make sure it is secure, and make sure you inform your insurer that the premises is not working. Generally, you may have up to 14 or 30 days before you need to notify them. But I would say pick up the phone now and check what your policy conditions are. If you have sent people home with laptops or their desktops that the company owns, make sure those are insured. So tell your insurer that your employees have taken equipment home. Yeah, this could be expensive equipment, laptops and computers. So make sure they're insured. If they're owned by the company, they should be insured under the insurance policy of the company. So that is really important. So make sure you do that. Number three, cyber security at home. When your employees are using machines at home, make sure they're aware of not clicking. You may be in a slightly more relaxed atmosphere. So even more vigilance when it comes to cyber security. So make sure your team and your employees are aware of that. So that is really important. What I would say is there may be an urge here to say, well, I don't need my business premises insured anymore while I'm not trading or while I'm not there. Be very, very careful, please, business owners. Talk to your broker, talk to your insurance company, and check and understand what your policy does. It does more than just provide business interruption. It protects against water. That is the number one claim in the United Kingdom, damage by water. It protects against theft, malicious damage, fire. So there is more to your insurance policy than just, protection against business interruption. So be very careful and take advice and speak to your broker on that. And last, what I would like to say is I would want to send a big thanks to White Label, because you guys have been publishing a blog every day about, sort of summarizing the huge volume of information that is coming at us. And what I would encourage, and, first of all, I read that with great interest every day. So thank you for doing that over the last week. I think Matt does that a little bit as well, and so does Cal. What I would say to the business community, and when I say business, I mean Croydon, and I'm quite proud to say that, is share useful stuff. Rather than just repeating what others have done or whatever, share some useful information, stuff that other people may think, well, maybe they're not aware of this. So maybe a useful link or something useful. And that's what I would end on. But thank you again for including us.
Very much. I have just been informed that there's a real chance this webinar will cut out at 11 because we're half an hour over the original allotted time. So very quickly, Matt, you have 30 seconds.
Right. I never have that time. Okay, so just on Rajan's point, in terms of your business, make sure it's secure. Make sure that everything is away from display if you can. We are working very closely with the Met Police to make sure that the streets are still patrolled and that the businesses are engaged with as much as we can. That's point one. Point two, there's a lot of information out there. You have to kind of sift through what's there and take the valuable stuff. We've mentioned the updates from White Label, but also the London Growth Hub is a very good source of information. Businesssupport.gov.uk is great. We have a COVID-19 section on www.croydonbid.com. And finally, Croydon Council section is also of value. Third, if you can adapt your business and your business model, adapt it if at all possible. Let's see what we can do. Let's see what new stuff we can make. And the final thing, which is what Fintan ended with, stay calm as much as you can.
Can I just add to that really quickly? Can we continue to collaborate? It's how we've built our business, and I think now, as ever before, we need to continue to do that. Can we remain positive? I know it's really difficult, but I know particularly in terms of local government and the local authority, I know they're doing an amazing job. They're really working around the clock, and it's really easy to be negative and critical. Let's try and remain positive and help rather than criticise. I think that would be really helpful in this situation. And I'd just like to say a huge thank you to my team for just putting out all the stops, as always. You're brilliant, you're amazing, and without you, we don't have White Label. So thank you. Joe.
I'll just finish up there because I think we are about to cut out very, very quickly. I'd just like to say thank you for the many people who have been sending in messages, and particularly those of support for the entire community. And I'd like to thank all our panellists and all our attendees from today. We are about to lose everybody, so thank you for attending. See you shortly. Catherine?
One last thing, the poll, really interestingly, how confident are you that you're going to make it through? Really interesting results so far. Midway at number 5, which is that's currently the highest one. People are relatively confident, I would say. Actually, very small percentage of people are absolutely 100% confident. But actually not a very, my eyes aren't actually good enough to read what it says. I'll just put my glasses on. 13% of people are saying that they are not confident at all. But in the mid-range, we've got 21% of people saying that they're confident they'll get through. And just 8% of people saying 100% confident. So if you could keep replying to that for a few more moments when we come off of this, and then we will continue to do that barometer as we continue these webinars. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, we will send the results out to you all. So thank you very much. Goodbye, and we look forward to being back in touch with you very soon.